Hello! Welcome to the Zinfi Technologies Partner Ecosystem Management video series. Please click on the subscribe button for informative videos on various aspects of partner ecosystem management. Over the past decade or so, organizations that rely on channel infrastructure to reach their end buyers have been making significant investments in unified channel management activities. However, they seldom consider the fact that these activities can vary quite a bit across countries, not only from a deployment perspective, but also in terms of their effectiveness. So what are the ways in which channel management varies? The first type of variation is the structure of the channel. These differences are primarily a function of market maturity. Developed countries like the US, the UK, Germany, Japan, and Australia tend to have a 1, 2, or 3-tier distribution system. There is a high level of financial transparency, tight financial controls to address corruption and other money-related issues, with sufficient laws and regulations and enforcement mechanisms in place. In these countries, the channel generally behaves in a very mature way. On the other hand, in emerging markets, places like Southeast Asia, certain parts of China, Eastern Europe, and parts of Africa, laws and regulations and enforcements are inadequate to control corruption, especially with respect to intellectual property and financial regulations and controls, and channel management activities tend to vary quite a bit from place to place. As a result, there are important differences in how companies market and what they need to think about when doing so. Segments like education, real estate, insurance, or finance tend to be driven by in-country laws and regulations. Because of those different laws and regulations, the structure of the channel in those segments varies greatly from country to country, and thus, channel management varies quite a bit too. A second factor that varies greatly from market to market has to do with specific solutions. Certain solutions that are common in large markets are simply not relevant in emerging markets. In the consumer space, a classic example of that is a product like the iPhone. The iPhone has been successful in most developed countries, but it really hasn't made much of a dent in the market in certain parts of Africa, India, and other parts of Southeast Asia simply because of its price. In those places, alternative solutions have opened up a whole different market. So retail distribution of the iPhone is very different in those markets compared to the more mature markets. A third factor in the variability in channel management is culture. I've already addressed that to some extent in my discussions of channel structure and market maturity. The legal structure of a company defines the culture of doing business, and vice versa. In countries like the US, Germany, the UK, and Canada, where the business culture is well-defined and policy-based, most transactions follow basic guiding principles and have a high level of transparency. On the other hand, in relationship-centric countries like France and Italy in Europe, or Japan, China, Korea, and India in Asia, or in certain parts of Africa, transactions tend to be based more on relationships. Who you trust, who you know, what the network is, rather than the merits of the value proposition or the business itself. Therefore, marrying channels in certain parts of the world can be tricky, because some of the transparencies that enable velocity and predictability in established markets are sometimes hard to achieve in a relationship-based market. Finally, a core factor that varies among different countries and regions is visibility. Visibility, in this context, refers to the ability of the channel management team to forecast what the organization will do in specific product categories over the next 3 months, 6 months, or even a year. In mature markets like the US, Germany, the UK, Japan, Korea, and Australia, the transaction infrastructure is highly sophisticated. And there is data available at multiple levels, so that when a B2C or B2B transaction is taking place, companies are tracking what's being sold, at what price point, to what type of customer, and so on. So there's a high level of visibility into these transactions. And there's also an integration of systems so that companies have good visibility into their inventory, the demand forecast, as well as the overall health of the business. It's a much different story in emerging and immature markets, especially when a product or service is sold through a 1 or 2 or multi-tier segment. Channel inventory becomes a huge challenge, as does overall visibility. In many of these emerging markets, companies often fail to understand their exposure or their run rate. As a result of these differences in visibility, once again, there's a great deal of variation by geography in how the channel needs to be managed. I hope I've been able to share at a high level how channel management can vary greatly for the same company across different countries and regions across the world. This is primarily driven by local needs, regional structure, legal parameters, cultural norms, and market maturity. While many elements of channel management remain the same, an organization's channel management strategy, as well as its approach to executing that strategy, needs to take these differences into account and adapt if the organizations want to be successful in building its channel and go to market at a global level. Thank you for watching Zinfi Technologies Partner Ecosystem Management video series. If you've enjoyed this video, please click on the like button. Please click on the subscribe button to stay informed on a variety of best practices for building a high-performing partner ecosystem using programs, process, people, and technology platforms. Hope to connect with you soon and have a great day.